He said, "Say it," and she did. And according to the partial transcript, the victim known as EM said, "Okay, it was all consensual. I enjoyed it. It was fine. I'm so sober. That's why I shouldn't be talking about it." That's what the defense played in court. But that video, it was recorded after the alleged assault, not before. After EM says she was crying, after she says that she wanted to leave, after 5 men had already taken turns. She was outnumbered, she was intoxicated, and one of them was holding a phone telling her what to say. And this is why we need to talk about what compliance under pressure looks like and what the body language says when the mouth is just trying to survive. Because consent isn't a script, consent isn't an act, and consent isn't a camera cue. And when someone is coached to say, "It was fine," then we have to ask ourselves, what would have happened if EM said that it wasn't fine? This video was offered as proof of consent in court, not just by the men involved, but also by their defense attorneys, who assumed that it would hold weight. But you know what happened? The judge dismissed it. We'll talk more about that later. And here's where I come in. And let's be real here. When someone is told, "Say it," and they repeat vague phrases like, "It was all consensual," "It was fine," "I'm so sober, that's why I shouldn't be talking about it," you know what? That's not clarity. That's not consent. You know what that is? That's statement shaping. The video wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't detailed. It definitely wasn't specific. And anyone trained in communication, detecting deception, or trauma-informed interviewing knows when someone avoids specifics, when they use vague, non-specific, non-committal language, a lot of times it means that the truth feels unsafe to say out loud. EM doesn't say what happened. She doesn't say who it happened with. She uses filler words like "this" and "it" over and over, while being filmed by one of the men she later said made her feel coerced. And as a body language and behavior expert, here's what I can tell you. If I had access to that video, I wouldn't just be listening to what EM said. I would be watching everything that didn't match. When someone is truly comfortable making a statement, when they're truly comfortable saying something, their words and their body align. That's congruence. That's comfort. That's confidence. And when the mouth says yes, but the body says no, a lot of times it shows through tension, through a stiff or guarded posture, to an overly rehearsed tone, or there could be an emotional shutdown. That's not credibility, that's a red flag. And this video, even based on the partial transcript alone, it's not evidence of real consent like the accused hockey players believed. In my opinion, it's evidence of pressure and incredibly poor judgment by everyone who thought that filming this video after the fact somehow made this okay. Today, we're breaking down the body language and the psychology behind the so-called consent video that was at the center of the Hockey Canada trial and why it is all kinds of wrong. But first, let me set the stage. In 2018, during a Hockey Canada gala in London, Ontario, a young woman identified only as EM said that she was smexually assaulted by 5 Canadian junior hockey players. And in 2022, the story exploded nationally when the settlement and the cover-up attempts came to light. So let's fast forward to July 2025, and these 5 Canadian World Junior hockey players were acquitted of all charges. The judge ruled that the Crown had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. But for many people watching, many people tuning in, there's one detail that really stood out. After the alleged assault, 2 videos were recorded, and in one of those 2 videos, EM appears to say that everything was okay and consensual, and the defense used both of these videos to support their case. But let me ask you this. What if those videos tell a different story? We don't have the actual footage, As far as I know, no one outside of the courtroom has seen them. But what we do have is part of one transcript of the video that's been in the press. And here's where it gets complicated. Here is a partial transcript of one of the videos that I'm going to read out loud. And in this transcript, it's one of the accused men, Michael McLeod, and the alleged victim, EM. So McLeod says, "Say it." EM says, "Okay, it was all consensual. Are you recording me?" McLeod, "Yeah." EM, "Okay, good. This was all consensual. I enjoyed it. It was fine. I'm so sober. That's why I can't do this right now." Now, let's pause right there and look exactly at what she said. First, he's telling her to what? Say it. That alone shifts the power dynamic. That's a command. She goes on to say, it was all consensual. Well, what does it mean? What is she talking about? Not what we think she's talking about. To really understand someone accurately, we don't fill in the blanks. We listen to their own words. We listen to what they say. We listen to the words that they choose. She goes on to ask, "Are you recording me?" That's awareness. Next, she says, "This was all consensual. I enjoyed it. It was fine." Again, she's using the word this. We don't really know what this refers to. And in a case of consent like this, it is really important to make sure that there's no ambiguity in what is said. She goes on to say, "I enjoyed it." What did she enjoy? It was fine. There's that word "it" again. We still don't know what it means. She goes on to say, "I am so sober. That's why I can't do this right now." That doesn't sound like someone who feels safe or feels like she has a choice to say anything different. Does it to you? That sounds like someone trying to say what she thinks she needs to say in order to have the situation over with. The "so sober" can come across as sarcastic. And that's why I can't do this right now. She's actually telling us she shouldn't be talking about it at that moment. Let's talk about trauma responses. Most people know about fight or flight, but there are two more responses. There's freeze and fawn. And when someone fawns, what they're trying to do is appease. They're trying to stay safe. And in order to stay safe, a lot of time they agree. They might even smile. It could be a polite smile, a robotic smile. They say what the person in power wants to hear, even if they're scared. And in court, EM testified that she had no memory of filming the videos, that she was crying, that she felt coerced, and that McLeod, one of the accused men, asked her multiple times to say that it was consensual. This is what trauma does. It disconnects you from your own body. It makes you say, "I'm fine," when you're actually just trying to get through something or survive it. It tricks people into thinking you're calm when you're completely overwhelmed inside. And we, as a society, still confuse compliance with consent. Recently, I did a whole other video about what we still don't understand consent as it relates to the Diddy trial, and I'll put that link in the comments below. And as I said earlier, I haven't seen this video, and as far as I know, no one outside of the courtroom has either. It hasn't been released to the public. But based on the transcript and based on the context, here's what I would look for if I were analyzing EM's behavior and body language in the video. I'd see what stands out. I'd see what's missing, what doesn't look right. If someone is saying that they agreed to something, and in this case, that they agreed to consensual smex, then I would want to see them calm and comfortable and relaxed as they're saying it on camera. This means that there would be a congruency in their body language and their words. There would be alignment. Let's talk about signs of stress, anxiety, discomfort, and tension that would suggest that maybe she wasn't okay saying these things on video. So what I would look for are micro expressions, which are fleeting facial expressions that happen within less than a second, that would indicate some dislike, disgust, contempt, or fear. I'd also look at her posture and gestures for any stiffness or tension, perhaps turning away or being closed off. I'd listen to her tone of voice. Did it sound robotic, monotone, mechanical, or too upbeat or too rushed? Because a lot of time, tension, stress, anxiety, fear can cause someone to speak faster than they normally do. I'd also look at her gestures. Are her movements fast and erratic? When someone is scared, fear can ignite their body language, make them move faster. Or are their movements more statuesque, very still and rigid? I'd also look for muscle tension, and tightness, whether in the jaw, arms, legs, hands, or being overly still. Because when the mouth says yes and the body says no, that is a contradiction worth paying attention to. It's also important to note that the judge didn't accept these videos as proof of consent. The judge ruled that consent must happen in the moment, not after the fact. However, the judge said that she didn't find EM to be credible or reliable. So why is it important to talk about this video? Because as I said in the Diddy video about what we misunderstand about consent, we judge people by how well they perform their pain. If a victim isn't crying, isn't screaming, isn't shaking, isn't visibly wrecked, isn't running away, then we don't believe them. If they're calm, if they try to stay composed, if they fawn, just go with it and say that it was fine, we doubt them. And we doubt them because it doesn't fit what we've been led to believe about smexual assault. Because only those victims who act in a certain scripted, stereotypical way are telling the truth. Because there can be no other option, right? No, that's not accurate. We assume emotional control means certainty. But for trauma survivors, emotional control is often what helped them get through it or help them survive that moment. Now, I have a question for you. Why did these men even feel the need to record a consent video after the fact? It's not typical to ask someone to go on camera and say that the experience was okay, that we're going to do this. Were they trying to protect themselves or justify something that they already knew possibly could have crossed a line? Because when 5 men ask for proof of consent after the fact, it tells you that they were already thinking about how this would look afterward. That's not clarity, that's possibly a cover. And some people might argue and say, well, what's wrong with a recording consent? Isn't that just being safe? And sure, given today's climate where people are terrified or being caught in a he said, she said situation, it might seem like a smart idea. But let's pause. If you feel like you need to have a video or a written contract just to protect yourself, that's not a sign of confidence. That's a sign of distrust. That's a sign of mistrust. It's obvious that you don't feel emotionally safe or trusting enough to have sex with someone. Maybe you shouldn't be having it with that person. Maybe it's better to have a conversation before engaging in any type of smexual activity, to talk about what it's going to be and being able to say no. Because it should be about connection, communication, and mutual respect. Instead of pulling out a phone, why don't you pull each other aside and have a conversation, a real conversation like I just said. Talk about what you're comfortable with. Is there anything off limits? If either one of us changes our mind at any point during activity, then you got to agree to stop it. Look, these conversations aren't sexy, but they're clarity, and clarity is respect. So here are my final thoughts. What can we learn from this? That consent comes before a person is touched. It must be loud, it must be clear, it must be verbal. It needs to be a yes. Actually, it needs to be a hell yes. If not, then you know what you got nothing, you got a no. We got to remember that not all pain looks loud, that not all compliance is consent. Videos can be manipulated visually, verbally, psychologically, and that body language, especially when it contradicts the words, is a signal that's worth examining closer. If you've ever felt dismissed, doubted, or disbelieved because you didn't act like a victim, then this video is for you. Look, this case may be closed, and these men may be acquitted. Well, not maybe, these men have been acquitted. But you know what? This conversation isn't over. Let's stop confusing silence with safety. Let's stop confusing performance with peace. And let's start asking not just what was said, but why it had to be said in the first place. And if this video resonated with you, like it, follow, subscribe, and share this video. Drop a comment below. What stood out to you? And I'm curious to know, have you ever said, I'm fine, just to survive a moment? And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns on human behavior, courtroom dynamics, and how to read what people aren't saying. Because the truth, sometimes the body whispers what the mouth is too afraid to say. I'm Blanca Cobb, a body language expert with a master's degree in psychology, and I'll see you in the next video.